you tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like now you realized using some of the funds that are being generated from the stablecoin into projects that also help drive Bitcoinization, the ethos of crypto.
On one side of the world, you have the big tech companies. On the other side, you have the financial companies like BlackRock, Google, right? Clear examples. BlackRock does finance, Google does tech. We are both. We are becoming one of the biggest financial companies in the world, and we are one of the biggest technology producers in the world. You know, there is a song, Iron Maiden song that I like a lot. It's called "Die with Your Boots On."
Yeah.
That's the type of people we are, right? So we want to do something that excites us, and we want to travel the world in doing so, and enjoy the ride.
Paolo, thank you so much for joining us on Coinage.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, I think it's, obviously there's a lot going on, but I just want to start, since we're here in El Salvador, talking about the move to El Salvador, how exciting it's been to be out here and see all of this, and what the Tether plans are looking like now.
So, first of all, we are very excited for El Salvador for many reasons. The first one is that it's a safe country and now it's a secure country. It's very important when you invest somewhere that and you bring people in, that you bring them in an environment that they can live in, that is safe. Second, from the regulatory point of view and licensing is great. There is a digital asset law, there is a stablecoin law, Bitcoin legal tender, huge support from the administration on digital currencies. So already that is almost perfection. Third is a great story. I mean, one of the most important things for me was like, usually I never had a great experience with politicians. Now I'm also Salvadorian, so I'm a citizen, but I'm born Italian. And I feel like in Europe, every single interaction I had with a politician was not the greatest, in the sense that I never had the feeling of a politician really caring that much about making a change. And yet here in El Salvador, you see the President Bukele, he actually do care about it. He is the living proof that if you have a president, if you have a politician that really deeply care about his own country, he can make a 180 degrees turnaround, is a truly game changer. So yeah, that is something that really pushed us towards being interested in being part of the story of renaissance of a country like El Salvador, considered the murder capital of the world, and now is becoming the safest country in the Americas and one of the safest countries in the world. So there are so many reasons. The people are nice here, they're smiling, has the opportunity to become the financial center of Central South America. So you name it, like all around the place, there are good reasons to be here.
No, it's exciting. It's the first time I've been out here as well, and just seeing kind of the stories of people who have leaned into the Bitcoinization of the country. It's been very exciting to see play out. But it's also interesting to see kind of the stablecoin piece of it too, because there aren't a lot of countries that are dollarized like El Salvador, and now with Tether moving over. I'm curious to get your take in terms of kind of what's now changed with the recent IMF deal and kind of making Bitcoin adoption more optional. If maybe it's fair to say that President Bukele and the country now realizes there's a huge opportunity too, just in terms of leaning into dollarization, not just Bitcoinization, but dollarization around the world, and doing that as El Salvador being the center of it.
So, first of all, Bitcoin as legal tender was already treated as optional. So, was legal tender, but de facto optional, in the sense that as a technology and as a new way of finance, I think that it's very important that you allow people to be first to learn about the technology, learn about the Bitcoin, but at their own pace. I think if you would force Bitcoin down the throat of everyone, that is a mistake. That is what Bitcoin is criticized of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So I think as Bitcoiners, we should be different. So it's fair to say that Bitcoin should have been optional from the beginning. I think I see very positively this kind of change, if you will, if you want to call it a change. So I know that some Bitcoiners made a lot of noise around it, but to me is as it should have been from the beginning. Second, I think that definitely El Salvador not having its own national currency has been very helpful because it allowed the country to explore Bitcoin, but also allows companies like Tether, so stablecoins, to be an important piece of infrastructure here.
Yep.
Because USDT is already heavily used in the country, but we're sure that over time it could be used even more. Remittances are a huge portion of the GDP of the country. So, in many other places in Central and South America, USDT is becoming the preferred way to do remittances.
Yep.
And more and more will streamline the process of doing remittances and also will make it cheaper.
Yeah.
As I said, to me, among all the use cases of dollar stable coins, the remittance is the most dear to me, because if you are a father of a family and you are working abroad, far from your children and your family, it's already hard, and usually are not super high paid jobs. And then even on top of that, you have to pay 10 to 15% to a remittances company. That is, I think, the worst business model.
Yeah.
I want to wake up in the morning and knowing that I'm doing business in a fair, nice way.
Yeah.
That is positive for society. So knowing that that USDT is actually completely reducing the impact that the monopoly had for such a long time is something that gives me happiness.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting in terms of how that scales, and again, leading into where it can become even more efficient in remittances. And obviously President Bukele might be the only person around the world who can say that he's truly leaned into the Bitcoin experiment. But now you have President Trump as well, who's also seemingly leaning into some of the crypto experiment. I wonder how you've kind of looked at the opportunity in helping with stablecoins outside the US, now with President Trump coming in, whether or not it shifts any of kind of the way you look at the opportunities within the US.
So there's a little bit of misconception on stablecoins, at least as we see it, right? So people think that, and our competitors are very US-centric. Mm-hmm. US is the most powerful country, is also the richest country in the world. So in general, would make sense to look at the US. But the reality is that if you live in the US, you have 20 ways to pay. You have bank wires, credit cards, debit cards, Zelle, Cash App, PayPal, you name it, right?
Yep.
So many different ways to pay. The US has already the best rails for US dollars. The competition in the US on anything is just insane. Sure, there are a lot of opportunities, but the competition is just insane.
Yeah.
Then you go outside the US, anywhere, apart Europe, you stop 1,000 people in the streets and you ask them, would you prefer to hold the US dollar or you would prefer to hold your national currency? 990 or more will say, I want to have the US dollar. Just the US dollar is the best fiat currency in the world. So in the world, there are 30 billion people that are unbanked. Not because they are bad people, just because they are too poor of being interest of the banks. In order to be interesting for a bank, you have to generate around $100 to $150 per year. So if you live in Haiti, or if you live in Africa, or if you live in many other places where the average salary is maybe $1 or $2 per day, mm-hmm. how you can give like 20% of your money that you make on a yearly basis to a bank is unfair. So the banks will not open bank accounts for these people. Half of the population of the world has this problem. So first of all, any company should pick its own battles. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have 30 billion customers that they don't have any option, yeah. and they would use you immediately, that is already an answer, right? Yeah. So you have to look at the product market fit and also the friction of the option. So the product market fit is given by the fact that the USDT is a digital dollar, is the digital dollar for all the emerging markets. So in Brazil, for example, USDT accounts for 80% of the entire trading volume and all the exchange volume for everything among all the different currencies. So 80% is USDT. And it's very the same if you go in Turkey and anywhere else. We already have a great product market fit. On the other side, we are in a situation where we're helping people that never had any other option. As a company, we need to look also to on how we can have the biggest impact in the world, as a net positive impact, of course, yep. hopefully. That comes from helping people that no one ever helped, right? Sometimes ago, I was on this interview was, I think, a FinTech Week in DC.
Yeah.
And I said, look, guys, there are many charities and many organizations in the US and also in all the richest countries. They are spending a lot of money for, dinners, and they talk about financial inclusion that is considered the 21st century problem to solve. And they're all doing these dinners with expensive bottles of wines and champagne and so on, but they never did anything for fight for financial inclusion.
Yeah.
Tether is a small company. They came up with a very simple idea, but actually it's changing the lives of 400 million people around the world. So I'm very proud of that, and I want to focus on those markets. I'm happy to leave the US markets to people that have already, our competitors are focusing on the bankers.
Yeah.
The bankers have already 15 ways to pay, and also the bankers will betray you for 1 basis point. We want to focus on the normal people.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that too, because the competition in terms of those, right when you kind of had mentioned this move to El Salvador and everything else in terms of what Tether wants to do outside the US market, seems like the Tether FUD really got loud from some of these other competitors. And you don't need to name names necessarily if you don't want to, but when you do look at maybe some of those intertwined blockchains companies like Ripple launching RLUSD, their stablecoin, what do you make of that in terms of what it means, maybe not just in the US, because you're right, there's a lot of options and a lot of ways to pay, but what it means from just kind of the competition in differentiating Tether versus those? How do you look at what they've tried to say about you and what makes Tether different?
Look at what Bitcoiners say about them. Look at what Bitcoiners say about us. All the Bitcoiners are here for a reason, because we share the ethos, the philosophy of Bitcoin. So, look, we started as a small company, like a couple Italian guys, and we exceeded our expectations. We made enormous amount of profits that are almost unthinkable. We didn't extract almost anything from the company. The vast majority of the profits are within the company to be reinvested in boots on the ground, in opportunities in all the emerging markets. So we are investing in our business model, but in our communities.
Yep.
If you look at our competitors, ask them to point on a map where any of the countries that I mentioned are, and see how many they get right. That is the problem. We spent our life in the streets. That's why we are here. That's why, we are not in a fancy, high, tall building in Wall Street.
I think it's fascinating to be, and it's really cool again to see everything, and even at Bitcoin Beach and everything happening here in El Salvador. I do wonder though, in terms of for you, Paolo, as running Tether, if there are fears that some of that regulatory capture could eventually be weaponized against you. And I guess we can point to the EU maybe. We'll leave the US aside. EU and MiCA and the idea of what we saw in delisting and Coinbase. It does seem very interesting to maybe see some of that strategy at play. Does any of that concern you in terms of the way that some of it's happened?
So, first of all, I think on the US, there are a few points there will be some requirements. We're completely ready to meet them. So we're not blinking an eye. I think our competition in the past was very nasty in the US, coming from the US. The guys among the guys you mentioned, their supporters paid for having trucks going around New York saying that we are bad guys. If that is their best way to do business, I'm sorry for them. Look, I love the competition. I think that I said it in an interview yesterday. Any product that does a better job than us should supersede Tether, should supersede USDT. We are even creating products that, like Tether Gold.
Yeah.
Tether Gold is stablecoin 100% backed by gold. On gold, you cannot make 5% per year. The reason why we made Tether Gold, and we are really hoping that will get traction, is because we think it's the right thing. So all these guys, all these other companies are seeing how much money we are making. But they really don't understand that, they only see that money as a projection of their next yacht, or their next plane, or skyscraper that they can buy, the penthouse. It's not us.
Well, I would agree. I've chatted with Reeve before, and I think it is very interesting to kind of see this all shaping up, because I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention Howard Lutnick and the idea of of him now being potentially Commerce Secretary. And it seems like it's another win for you guys in terms of at least having someone attached to Tether who can back all this up and say, no, this is real and they're the good guys. I mean, was that a complete game changer in terms of Lutnick's attachment and win?
Sorry, it seems like I sidetracked to your question on the EU before moving to counter.
Yep.
My concern with the EU is that, 2 years ago was March 2023, and our major competitor had $3.3 billion in uninsured cash deposits in Silicon Valley Bank. Mm-hmm. What the MiCA license is requiring from stablecoins is that they are requiring 60% of reserves in uninsured cash deposits, and so when our main competitor in the US almost died through Silicon Valley Bank for that same mistake, they are now making the same mistake in the EU. They applied to MiCA and they are going to make the same mistake. I can tell you because in the next years, some small European banks that are the only ones that are onboarding crypto are going to fail, dragging down also the stablecoins, dollar stablecoins that are decided to take this enormous risk, because 60% in uninsured cash deposits means that if you are 10 billion euro stablecoin or dollar stablecoin, just to make the math simple, 6 billion, 60%, so 6 billion euros has to be kept in uninsured cash deposits in a bank. I'm saying uninsured because the insurance on the cash deposits is 100,000 euros in Europe. And so the banks in Europe also can do a fractional reserve. So 90% can be lent out to people that want to buy a house and start a business. So you get $5.4 billion or euros that are lent out. 600 million are kept in the bank balance sheet. In 2022, Tether was able to redeem 20% of its reserves very quickly, among which $7 billion in 2 days. Imagine if a stablecoin gets 20% redemption very quickly. That would be $2 billion or euros. Then you go to the bank, you ask for $2 billion. And the bank will say, well, I have only 600 million. So the bank goes bankrupt because they cannot fulfill the requirement. And so their regulator will shut them down. And you as a stablecoin issuer will go under as well, and you will die. I love regulations because it makes things very clear. But regulation should help the consumers, should not create a systemic risk for the bank and the stablecoins.
To pair those points too, I think it is pretty interesting because you mentioned about the DPEG and Silicon Valley Bank going down and USDC depegging.
You named the name. I didn't say the name.
I'll say the name. I can say the name. You don't need to say the name. But when that happened, the idea right now too, Howard Lutnick was just talking in his hearing about the need for stablecoins to provide audits and that idea. Maybe some people could say it was a little bit ironic that like the one that had said, hey, here's where our money is in Silicon Valley Bank, depegged because that's where the money was and everyone knew the risk at the time. Does it almost make more sense to just never provide an audit, to never run into that risk?
I think that there is a little bit of confusion there. The reason why they depegged is that you can, if you want, if they were 100% in T-bills, right? They went on this campaign saying, we are the best. Our risk management is the best. Look at that other company, Tether. They are not like us. They are Italians. Like, we don't like them. And they are very dangerous. And so then, eventually, they did what they're accused us of. And so, they took a lot of risk keeping the money there, and they almost died. So it's not about the disclosures. We have quarterly attestations that say everything that we have, and our attestations are not 1 page long like our competition, are like very, very long with every single disclosure. They have independent controls on an independent reach and confirmation about everything with our institutional depositors. We think that having an audit is important. If that is a requirement, we are going to meet it. Any requirement, we are pretty sure that we are going to meet it. So, but one thing, like I think was Wirecard had an audit and that it went bad. What I'm saying is that for us, and we have the quarterly attestations, we have the reserves, we had Counter even yesterday announcing, or Howard said, we turn every single rock for 2 years. That is something that no one has. And plus, in 2022, we redeemed 20% of our assets very, very fast. much more than any bank in the world was able to do, because usually more than 10% they go bankrupt.
Yeah.
So we have not an hypothesis here of solidity. We have proof. By fire, Hindenburg Research put a bounty on us. Short sellers tried to create a bank run. No one ever was able to create a problem to Tether.
Yeah.
So the first, wave of wind to our competitors, they went belly up. So what I can say.
No, I mean, we can leave the competition point there because I think it's a good point to make when you look at everything. When we look at maybe, I guess, what comes next for Tether in terms of what you're most excited about now, being down here in El Salvador, how do you kind of see this as maybe a doubling down on what's worked so far in really trying to expand?
To us, Central and South America are going to be central for the future of the world. I think as a born European, I'm very bearish on Europe. If you follow me on Twitter, you see my memes on Europe.
Yes.
15 years ago, the European economy was the same size of the US economy. Now it's half of that. It means that Europe did something wrong. There is no innovation in Europe. Everyone that wants to innovate go outside of Europe. And I think that US is now, especially with this new administration, will double down on crypto and on AI, great. But I think Latin America, especially if you look at El Salvador, but even Argentina, I like Milei, he was able to bring down inflation. I think this is a moment of opportunity for this region. That's why I'm excited to be here and part of the story.
Yeah, no, and it's also one of those markets that doesn't have what El Salvador has, which is free capital controls. And so if that all is to change, it's going to be very exciting to watch that play out. And I know that you guys will be down there and active in it. When it comes to, I guess, to some of the pivots around the battle and back and forth, one of the interesting things that Howard Lutnick made clear at the Bitcoin conference where Trump spoke last year is that Tether is leading the way when it comes to security and helping make sure that funds that are being used aren't used for nefarious reasons. It's a tough example to point to, but it just happened recently. The Ledger co-founder getting kidnapped. One of the team members there said that Tether did a great job in terms of trying to help with that. How much of it is confusing for you, Paolo, to see maybe some of that narrative still get pushed, that you guys aren't doing it, when you're getting compliments for helping people and law enforcement? And what more, I guess, is there to correct that record, using that example maybe as one?
Well, let's think about who is spreading those rumors.
Yeah.
Maybe we go back to the 5 minutes ago conversation where we're discussing about competition. If a group of competitors would go as far as renting trucks, putting them around DC and New York, spreading lies. I mean, they can do anything.
Yeah.
In the end, they will not succeed. But what they're trying to do is to spread these rumors that, if there is this guy on Twitter called ZachXBT.
Yeah, for sure.
Look at what they said about us, what he said about us and about our competitors.
Yeah.
Our competitors didn't freeze assets linked to North Korea, money laundering, and potential weapon acquiring.
Well, it seems like it's been more of an emphasis now for you guys in terms of either figuring it out or working with, I'm going to be on the panel with Chainalysis tomorrow. It's working with enforcement.
We work with 230 law enforcement agencies across 50 different countries. Yeah. There is no financial institution that is so granular and is so well structured to do so. And we can do it also thanks to Chainalysis. Yeah. We had recently a partnership with TRM Labs and others. Sometimes there are facts, sometimes there is just marketing. Unfortunately, we are simple people. I come from a farming family, small farm in Italy. I used to keep my head down and work hard and make sure that my work can speak for myself. Yeah. So we are not used, maybe call me naive, and surely we have been very naive in the past. A mistake that we are starting to learn to not be. I think some of our competitors will have an hard time if they keep doing this, if they keep playing these games.
Yeah.
We don't want to waste our time with noise, right? So we know that we onboarded the FBI, we onboarded the United States Secret Services, we work with DOJ, we work with Treasury, we work with Europol. with the MBCTF.
Is it a tricky thing to do though? I mean, I imagine it would be. Like you said, Bitcoiners get touchy whenever it's like, hey, you're talking to the government about some of this stuff. So it's like tricky to say like, hey, we do what we need to do, but also maybe,
The balance between Bitcoin, look, the way I describe it is like, I'm a Bitcoiner, but Tether is a stable coin. And people should understand, a stable coin is digital dollar. We actually go around the world and we explain how Bitcoin works before explain how USDT works. That us Bitcoiners should not be obnoxious thinking that everyone in the world has the time that we had to understand Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's us that we should educate people and should make better product to bring more and more people to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But all these people have an immediate need. These are people that don't have any other options. The only thing that they knew is trying to stash some dollar bills under their mattress.
Yep.
So we need to give them what they need now the most when they have 50% inflation in their country.
Yep.
So holding the dollar is already very helpful to them. And then while they download the first digital wallet, we can explain them Bitcoin.
One last question in terms of the stablecoin side before we get into what I think is really fascinating now is how you're using some of the funds in investments, which is, I'd love to get your take on what's most exciting there. But in terms of the size of it all now, because as you mentioned, it's like, hey, where do we want to put some of the backing of this stablecoin? Obviously, U.S. Treasuries being a significant chunk of that. Is it getting more and more difficult in terms of just the size? It was mind-blowing to see like Germany being surpassed by you guys in terms of treasury holdings, but
the beauty is that the vast amount of treasuries is in Cantor.
Yep.
They are like a primary dealer, connection with the Fed. The US has printed $2-3 trillion in the last few years, so it's not that difficult. I mean, China is selling their T-bills.
Yeah.
They were $2 trillion a few years ago, now they are 800 billion. Even now Japan has to sell some T-bills because their national currency, the Japanese yen, is not living a nice moment.
Yeah.
There is always necessity for new buyers of T-bills. And that's what Tether is doing. We are actually, whenever a person in Argentina, in Turkey, in Brazil, they want to buy USDT, we take the dollars and we turn around, we give them directly to Cantor to buy T-bills.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like a MicroStrategy play on dollar access is really the way you could also say.
I mean, for the US, USDT is the best thing after sliced bread.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it is getting dollars in the hands of people who want it, and I think it's very fascinating to see kind of how it's done. But I do want to kind of pivot a little bit to the next step, which I think is exciting. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about it, but I guess, one of the very exciting things is after Trump won, it became very clear that a U.S. central, a CBDC was off the table. I'm sure you're kind of attached to these conversations. How close do you think we were, if Trump didn't win, to maybe see a US CBDC?
I think Europe is trying to do that with the digital euro. I think it's a very bad idea, very, very bad.
Why?
Because every time you tap your credit card now, that transaction stays between you and your financial institution. So there is a layer between you and the government. There is a separation between state and so your money and the state. If you have a CBDC, the government can easily geolocate you every time you stop around, you buy a piece of meal, you buy coffee, or you go online, you buy anything. The government will know exactly everything that you do. If the government is great and super nice and is the best government in the world, you don't have anything to fear. But we cannot, the US should not criticize China if then they're going in the same direction.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I feel like also, when it comes to it though, the fears of it under potentially a different administration were probably higher and relatively so. Yeah. We know very clearly it won't happen under Trump, but I'm curious if you thought like we were actually super close to seeing it.
I think we were quite close. Of course, the implementation would have taken years, but I think that was the trend, for sure.
When it comes to, I guess, now this next chapter of Tether, and maybe it's fair to say it, maybe it's not, I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong. But it seems like now you realized using some of the funds that are being generated from the stablecoin into projects that also help drive Bitcoinization, the ethos of crypto, decentralizing various different things. Talk to me about what you're most excited about there, because there's investments in AI, there's investments in implantables, in Rumble. What's the mandate now?
We invest in multiple things. We have Rumble. We invested in Rumble because we wanted to defend freedom of speech. I think is right now, if you see in all the social media companies are suddenly pivoting. First they were pro-censorship, and now, you know, they don't want to censor anymore. They are like flags to the wind, or, you know, they whatever.
Meta is hot.
Yeah. I mean, it's so sad. Look, I mean, you should have some, you know, self-respect, and you know, you should have some ethos. Honestly, it's like they will change whatever is in power. They will just change the entire philosophy. Yeah. I really don't like that type of attitude.
Is it surprising to see that pivot from like a Mark Zuckerberg of the world?
Surprised not, yeah. But there is a huge difference between a person like Chris Pavlovski, yeah, that always stood up for freedom of speech, and someone else that actually decides to change where based on the wind. You know, leaving that aside, then we are investing in artificial intelligence. We're investing in many different things. We have more than 90 portfolio companies in different areas. We have, of course, companies that are more focused on the expansion of USDT, installed monetary base, boots on the ground companies that are taking care. They have kiosks in Africa, kiosks in Central and South America, yeah, that are helping with remittances. They're helping to, you know, do on-ramp and off-ramp of USDT. You know, also the other things that we are doing compared to anyone else is that now, if you are a company and you want to raise capital, you go to in Silicon Valley, you go to a VC and you would ask for money. Yeah. They would tell you, if you have a physical distribution network, sell it and rent it back. We are the opposite. We think that the globalization is almost finished, and every single country will start focusing more on inside, and there will be a huge push for localization. I think I think Tether is very close to have the biggest distribution network in the world, physical distribution network in the world. With that network, we can help people with stablecoin, but also we can help them with education and any other product we want.
Yeah.
And this is where this network is built to serve people that are now looking for the first time at the digital era.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, I can tell you, we are very excited about that because it's going to be massive. Yeah. We are going to tap in an infinite potential of people that are going to join the digital revolution, but they will work for their own country. Yeah. They will not care what other countries, like tens of thousands of kilometers away, are going to do. This is the thing that our competitors don't understand. The reason why USDT is so strong is because we built this huge physical distribution network across the globe. There's not enough money that they can make and they can invest to replicate that. Yeah. Because it's done in such a capillary way that is just mind-blowing.
No, it has. I mean, having heard you describe it that way, it almost changes the way that you might look at Tether as a company. It's no longer just kind of stablecoin company. It's a network effect company of digitizing dollars.
On one side of the world, you have the big tech companies. On the other side, you have the financial companies like BlackRock, Google, yep, right? Clear examples. BlackRock does finance, Google does tech. We are both. We are becoming one of the biggest financial companies in the world, yep, and we are one of the biggest technology producers in the world. Look at Hole Punch, look at like what we're doing with Rumble, look at what we are doing with brain-computer interfaces, yeah, artificial intelligence. Just this year we have tens of products that we are going to roll out on all these different things. So we are, I think, the first company. Tomorrow I have my keynote. Is a little bit. I hope that it doesn't not like sound like an ego trip, but it's called like once in 100 years company. Yeah. Because I truly believe that we can actually create a company that is going to change the world for good. Yeah. Is run by people that, you know, exceeded by hundreds of times what they thought they were going to do in their lives. Yeah. So we are content. We are the type of people, you know, there is a song, Iron Maiden song that I like a lot. It's called Die With Your Boots On. Yeah. That's the type of people we are, right? So we want to do something that excites us, and you know, we want to travel the world in doing so, and enjoy the ride.
Well, it's been exciting to watch, and now kind of walking the walk as you guys move out here into El Salvador. It's been really cool to see everything play out. So I can't thank you enough for the time, Paolo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
It was
Appreciate
a pleasure.
it.